Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Fat Mascara, a podcast about beauty culture. I'm one of your hosts, Jen Sullivan. I would love to ask you a quick favor. If you have 2 seconds, maybe it takes like 5 seconds, please throw us a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen if they let you do reviews. Or you can comment directly on episodes on Spotify. In fact, this episode is exactly why you should comment. It's the comment section on Spotify where I got the idea for this episode. So if you remember, our contributor Julie Wilson and I, we spoke a few weeks ago about a variety show that I went to. It was called the Bathing Culture Variety Show here in New York City. When I told her about it, we briefly discussed it. It set off a discussion in the comments. Then Garrett, our other contributor, weighed in a week or so later. He loves a bathhouse. And that whole topic brought up some questions, but the main one being, why aren't bathhouses a bigger part of post-colonial American culture? Like, you just do not see communal bathhouses or social bathing scenes in most of the United States right now, like you do in other areas of the world. Well, someone who is working to change that is today's guest, Robbie Hammond. So he was actually the MC of that variety show I told you about, and he's also the president and chief strategy officer of Therme Group US, which is part of Therme Group, a global group of companies that believes well-being should be accessible, and they're probably best known for developing well-being resorts, many of which include a bathhouse element. So before this job, Robbie was the co-founder of the High Line here in New York City. And if that sounds familiar, it's because it's the public park that runs along an elevated former rail line and brings together art, people, nature, and more. So Robbie is going to answer some questions that were raised by listeners about preconceived notions many Americans have about what goes on in bathhouses. But he's also going to talk about why he loves bathhouses, the culture they facilitate, and offer us a vision of what bathhouses or bathing culture can be in the future here in the United States and everywhere around the world. Okay, let's just get into it and welcome Robbie to the virtual studio. Okay, Robbie, welcome to Fat Mascara. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, I've talked about you on the show already. I hope you know that. I went to your bathing culture variety show, of which you were the MC. Truly a role made for you, I have to say. And I really enjoyed it. And I realized a lot of people and a lot of our listeners don't know a lot about what even a bathhouse is. So before we get into you, before we get into the culture of it all, like, hi, welcome to Fat Mascara, first of all.
Hi.
What's a bathhouse? How would you define it?
Yeah. That's part of it, is that it has what we tried to do in the variety show is to show there is no one bathhouse. But it's basically a place, it's a social place. It's not your bathroom, and it's not a spa. To me, a spa is somewhere, it's underground. You're usually by yourself, or if you see other people, you pretend you don't see them, and you get treatments. Whereas a bathhouse is about being with other people. And it's a social experience. And it usually involves some kind of heat and water. It can be a sauna, it can be cold plunge, it can be just sitting in warm water. But to me, the most important part is really and I'll get to some of the things that I think make it important, but really to me, it's a social experience.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to get into that. But first, how did what was your first bathhouse? Do you remember the first bathhouse you ever went to?
I guess I grew up in Texas, so we didn't really have any. I guess my first one was the Russian baths on 11th Street.
Here in New York City?
On 10th Street, yeah. Probably in the mid-90s. I graduated from college in 93.
Now, is this the bathhouse where there's the 2 owners that had the fight?
Yes.
And if you had a subscription, you had to go on Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday? Okay. I know
and
the
it's
bathhouse.
Still, now it's there. It's to a niece and a nephew that own it.
Yeah, you growing up in Texas is like most people in America don't have bathhouses in their towns.
No. And the Russian bathhouse is a very specific experience. It's more of it's called Russian and Turkish baths, but it's really more of a traditional Russian banya, the hot room. They have a room like you would have in a hammam, but it's really, to me, a Russian banya, and it was very traditional. It's been there for 100 years. When I went, it was a lot of Russian and Hasidic men.
Okay.
And then a lot of gays. I think every other day was all male clothing optional. And so there was a really heavy gay, cruisy aspect to it.
Okay, you're getting right into this, so then I have to ask you about this. This came up on my podcast too. How does gay culture play into bathhouse culture? This is not where I wanted to start, but you did bring it up. No. I think that a lot of people think that is still the culture.
Yeah, it was
100%
actually
of the
the
time.
first when I went to go work for this company that does these huge, large-scale questions. Before I had the job, the first question I asked the CEO, I was like, well, what about the gays? Do the gays have sex in your facilities?
And?
He was like, I realized I jumped in too quick.
You did that on my podcast too. It's like I'm giving you a job interview here. Here we go.
Yeah. So when I came out in New York, a bathhouse generally meant, you said the Russian bathhouse, you meant that one. But if you said a bathhouse, most of the bathhouses were gay bathhouses that were basically sex clubs. I mean, people went for other things, but that's really why you went. Now, interestingly, they were not built as gay sex clubs. They were built mostly as Russian bathhouses with these little rooms. Because I realized when I went to an old bathhouse in Munich, I went and they had you, when you got in, they gave you a sheet and a towel and a key, and you got a little cabana with this crappy thin mattress. And the idea was you would go and bathe and then come back and take a nap.
So the bath was the communal part. The little cabin was your little nap pod.
Yeah, was your nap pod.
But
exactly. It turned into, as the Russians moved out of the city and the gays moved in, it was a pretty convenient switchover to those being little cabins that people could retire back to. But it's not as all fun and laughter when I moved to New York, because it was also in the middle of the AIDS epidemic. So they became very politicized around gay panic and health, because there's also a health crisis. And this is where the gay community was divided. A lot of gays said, look, this is one of the few places we can meet up.
Yeah.
This is where, we meet people. This is literally part of our culture. And then there were other gays that say, look, this is a vector of disease. This is where people, and another argument in favor was like, look, this is where we can encourage safe sex. It's actually, there's an opportunity here because you have people here. And ultimately, like, Giuliani just shut them all down. And it's interesting, if you look at bathhouses, there's always, this is not the first instance of like sex panic and health issues. And we can get into the health issue of our own time, with COVID. So for those of us of a certain age in New York, when you say bathhouse often, and a lot of bathhouses in other cities, if you look them up, because now when I go, I will Google bathhouse, often you get gay bathhouses that are clothing
Now, is this in
optional.
America or other cultures? Because I feel like...
No, I mean...
all over the world.
I have a friend that would go to Rio, and when he went to Rio, he would always go to a local bathhouse. That's not me. That's a friend that did that. And those were basically, it's a way to meet friendly locals. But so yes, that is not a U.S. thing. Now, most of them closed after the AIDS epidemic. And what happened, it also took down a lot of just regular bathhouses. The whole industry became sort of stigmatized around homophobia and that you were going to catch, AIDS. And people honestly didn't know at the time, how it was transmitted. So there was a lot of false narratives. But what I find interesting is they talk to a 20-year-old now and you say, bathhouse, either they think of the thing in Williamsburg or they don't even know what I'm talking about.
Well, I think you're right. And by the way, if you were in South Korea through the 90s and early aughts, they didn't shut down there. The jimjilbangs, like that, in different cultures,
Correct.
This never
Correct.
had the issue we have had here in America. Is that right?
Correct. And that's why my CEO didn't know what I was talking about. In Romania, the large Therme, that's not...
It's still the thermal
These are
baths.
huge public facilities. And that's why they don't tend to have either gay or straight sex, is because they're huge, they're naturally lit, there's thousands of people, they're not tucked away in a dark basement.
I want to talk about some of the different types of bathhouses around the world, but first, what we're doing here in America and what's happening. But first, we have to go back up a little bit, and to you specifically. People in New York know you as like the Highline guy. Tell us who you are and how you what you do now. What is your job now? Why am I talking to you about bathhouses, Robbie?
Yeah. So yeah, the Highline guy, I co-founded the Highline with a partner of mine, Joshua David, back in 1999, so over 25 years ago. And then I ran it for almost over 20 years. And so that's most of my life is Highline. It was sort of my first baby. And then I'd been wanting to leave. I didn't want to die at the Highline. And I left once before and ended up going back and, was sort of ready to leave. But I couldn't find a job that was that interesting. The Highline's a pretty good job running the Highline, no matter whatever I got interested in, artist or creative person or graphic designer or program. I could always figure out a way to incorporate it into
gardening,
the Highlights.
Urban planning.
Yeah, whatever it was, I could find a way to loop it back in. And so it was a pretty fun job. But then I heard this mentor of mine sold his company to his employees, and I thought he was going to retire, but he said it was during COVID, and it was the first time I'd seen him in 2 years, and he said, I'm going to go work for this company that has this huge bathing operation in Europe, and we want to and he was trying to explain it to me, and I was like, stop. I get it. This is what I've dreamed of. The Roman baths were an obsession of mine. I got a Rome prize, and I got to live in Rome for a year in 2012, and became obsessed with the Roman baths. Why couldn't we have something like that? These giant facilities with the best art, libraries, food. Everyone from the wealthiest to the poorest citizen would go there. Why can't we have that? We have stadiums. We have all these other giant things.
We have the Highline. I see a connection. There's a through line.
I sort of did think, if I could do the Highline, could I do that? Probably not. And so I let it go. But then when I found out about this company, it's called Therme, the concept, there's a few of them in Germany. The one that the company I work for has as the main facility in Bucharest. And these things are huge. We just bought another Therme that's 750,000 square feet. That's like Yankee Stadium size.
Where is that?
That's outside of Munich, called Erding, Therme Erding. And then the smallest one in Bucharest is 350,000 square feet, which is also huge.
Okay, this means nothing to me. How many people could fit in that? That would help.
Yeah, the larger one gets about 2 million visitors a year. You can have 4,000 or 5,000 people at any one time.
Okay, so these are bigger even than the biggest ones in New York City, that like World Spa and those kind of places.
I mean, by a factor of 15
they're
or 20.
Stadiums.
Yeah, except they're like botanical gardens because they're all under glass and you have multiple pools, 2,000 palm trees, thousands of plants, and there's different sections. There's a part for kids and families that's basically a really nice indoor water park, but most of it, 2/3 of it, is just for adults. So you can have 25 saunas. You can have all different kinds of mineral pools.
So you took a job with that. What do they pay you to do every day? What's your job?
I know. It's I thought I had a good job before. I mean, for the first year, I spent a lot of time just going around the world looking at bathhouses and spas and trying to understand what were the competitors, what's out there. And it was at a time where my husband and I had just had our second kid. And so it was a source of incredible discomfort in our relationship in that he was at home with a several-month-old and I was like complaining that like I had to go to 3 hammams and my skin had been overly scrubbed.
We all hate you.
Or I was like, I shouldn't have done the treatment again. Or, I went when I was in Helsinki, I think I went to maybe 9 saunas in one day, which is tiring. It is tiring.
Yeah.
But he didn't care.
But to what end? You're doing this research.
To what end? To figure out how do we bring this to the U.S. So Germany and Europe has this product. They're called thermal baths. They're all different size. They're not as big. We have the biggest, but these are all over Germany. Some of them are resorts, but most of them are mass market products. They're people. It's just like people go all the time. It's like going to the local YMCA or something.
Can I paint a picture for people like, Great Wolf Lodge out in PA? I don't know if our listeners all know that, but I'm from Philadelphia. It's like an indoor water park with a hotel, with a restaurant, whatever. Some of them, but yeah.
Some of them. And some of them are nicer and don't. I mean, I go to Great Wolf with my kids. And some of them are sort of
That's not what you're
nicer
trying to do.
too.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're more for adults than kids. Right now, when we think of, people often just think, oh, so you're building water parks. But it's really, and it's not, and people say, oh, it's a spa. But again, spa conjures up basement, alone, someone whispering to you, can I put the towel over?
And expensive.
And very expensive. So the average entry price for a family in Romania is $25 a person. So, and people stay between 4 to 6 hours. So it's really
4 to 6 hours.
Yeah, it's a staycation. People don't go. 60% of the people in Bucharest have visited. I like to think it's like democratizing well-being. It's not. It's that's why it's sort of the opposite of the spa and the opposite of most of what well-being is today. Like I go to the Global Wellness Summit, and a lot of it is hotels. Now it's sort of filtering down. It used to be the Six Senses or the St. Regis had wellness facilities. Now the Hyatts and Marriotts are trying to get in. But they're really luxury products. They're expensive, and they're really, for most people, if they're even available or accessible at all, it's sort of a vacation thing. It's not something people can afford to do every day. And so that's to me what bathhouses do, is this more accessible well-being. And it's not, part of it, yes, is a new trend. I'm sure every one of your listeners has heard of contrast bathing, the hot and cold, getting into the cold. I mean, literally, people have been doing that since as long as we were getting in water. But that's sort of a newer trend. But people have been doing that in bathhouses for thousands and thousands of years. Again, 2,000 years ago, the Romans had these facilities that could fit 1,000 people in each one. So this is not new. People have just been rediscovering it over and over. And in different reasons. I mean, now I think a lot of it is just, one of the things I think is people go for the health, but they stay for the social, they stay for the friendship, they stay for the other reasons. It's what often gets people there now is they listen to a Peter Attia podcast or a variety of different things, but it's something about health, longevity, but then they realize all the other benefits.
What is it about this that drew you? Was it the making a community aspect? Was it the urban planning? Was it, I just really like bathhouses? And then, what's your job?
It was that I found the Highline, the reason I think, and it wasn't like we necessarily like planned it like this. I think the reason the Highline is successful is the way people used to use their leisure time was they would go to boxes. You would go to a museum if you wanted art. If you wanted to play, you'd go to a theater. If you wanted to work out, you'd go to a gym. If you wanted nature, you'd go to a park. If you wanted plants, you'd go to a botanical garden. In some ways, what the Highline did is it combined all those into one, and now people want to experience things together. In sort of the old days, you went, you'd go by yourself or just friend. Now people go in groups, and they also want to capture it. And so in some ways, that's what the Highline was, a combination of all these things put together in a completely unique way. And that's what I recognized right away that Therme had done, is they had taken water parks, some parts of spas, pools, health areas, sort of beaches, bathhouses, and put them all together into sort of one kind of product that, again, is not new in Germany. The scale was new, but we didn't have that. We have all those verticals. We don't have it in one. And so one of the reasons they hired me was I'd had sort of an experience of creating a product people really didn't, a new category that didn't exist. Now, if you say, oh, we want to build a Highline in our city, it doesn't necessarily mean an elevated railroad. It means some kind of creative use of old abandoned space. And that's what I think with Therme, we want to create this new category of these bigger facilities that keeps what the size allows us to have higher quality. So like we use an ozone filter with the water so it doesn't smell like chlorine or mold. An ozone filter costs thousands of dollars. Even an imam can't afford an ozone filter because it doesn't make sense to get a multi-million-dollar filter for a small pool. Whereas our size, we're able to do things like that. The other thing the size does is it keeps the price down and makes it more accessible. So it also connected like urban planning because we want to put these in cities. That's right now, most of them are in the suburbs, like where you would normally go to some kind of attraction. Yeah. Greenfield development, places where they're just picking a field and having 20 acres. The CEO, a guy Robert Haneo, when he hired me and who was my mentor, now my colleague and boss, John Alschuler, we were all committed in the U.S. to doing, and all the future ones, we want to be in cities. We don't want them to be in the suburbs. We want them to be part, and that's the other thing that I recognize, this is like well-being infrastructure. You know, if the High Line was a kind of social infrastructure, sort of like libraries and parks, this is a kind of well-being infrastructure that cities need, and you shouldn't have to drive to them. You should be able to access them with public transportation or in the middle of cities rather than outside. And it's corresponding to a time where cities need people to come back into their core. And there's a lot of extra space because the commercial and retail uses aren't that strong as they were in downtowns.
Now, you have your work cut out for you in America, which we'll talk about, obviously. Misconceptions, how are you going to do this? Is there a history of this in the United States? I'm thinking like pre-Robert Moses era.
Yeah, yes, there were bathhouses. That's what these bathhouses that became,
Well,
they were
before
a
the
lot of
Russian
them were,
baths even, just like a public pool. I don't know.
It was actually during the Robert Moses that they built these large-scale public pools, which is a kind of public bathing.
And you want to sort of reinvigorate that in a new way.
Yes. And I think what we're interested in also is, those were just seasonal because those were all outdoors, is how can you do this year round?
Okay.
And when we're talking about, I'm interested in what I'm paid to do in my job, which is for Therme Group. And we want to build these big facilities in several cities in the U.S. But it's going to take us, it's like a Highline timeline. It's going to take us multiple years. We have to get the space, then we have to get the zoning, we have to be able to raise the money, we have to build it. It's going to take 4 or 5 years at the earliest till we can open one of these. And so in the meantime, I just became obsessed with this bathing culture that is already happening, this renaissance of bathing that's already happening. And to me, the best example is just a few blocks north of me in Flatiron. There are 4 bathhouses within 5 blocks of each other, and 3 of them all opened last year, and they're all doing gangbusters. I tried to go to one at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday, and it was already sold out. You can't even go unless you buy tickets weeks in advance on the weekend. And then there's still the Russian baths, and there's the Wall Street baths, and then there's World Spa, and there's Sojo, and there's QC Therme on Governor's Island. And they're all very different products. Like, I go to them for different reasons, and that's one of the things I really want to encourage people to do. One of my favorites is Othership, and it's probably one of the most popular, and others is Bathhouse. And you see a lot of them on Instagram. They photograph beautiful. It is amazing it's one of those things normally when you see it on Instagram and then you go to it and it looks kind of crappy. Like whenever I walk in to Othership, I'm like, this looks like an Instagram reel. It's so
Do you think that's
flattering.
part of it, that popularity?
Definitely.
Are these like the ice cream museum of like bathing? I don't know.
Yeah, but I think, again, people come for that.
Yeah.
But they stay because they're getting something else. And I want to come back to there's 3, to me, like pieces of the stool of bathing. But for some people, Othership's not going to be the right thing. They don't want to sit there that close with a bunch of 20-year-olds in thongs. Some people, that's what they really want. Some people, they want something else, quieter. And so they can go to if I go on a double date with my husband, I like to go to Bathhouse because it's quieter and you don't even have to go in the sauna. You can just sit in the warm pools and get food. If I want to go on a sort of a work meeting, I go to Ilani because it's quieter, it's easier. If I'm by myself and I just want to get like a quick sort of fix-in, I go to Othership. If I want to go on a staycation, if I want to take like a weekend and go for several hours, I go to World Spa, which, takes 45 minutes, or Sojo in New Jersey. So there are all these, I just want people to try other things.
Yes, and Therme Group would maybe be, the family's going to go, we're all going to connect together, the cousins are going to come, we'll meet you at Therme Group for a day's outing.
Yeah. It doesn't replace, that's why it's so great and why I love these people that own these things, because they're not really competitive. When we did this, the thing you went to, it was the end of a 2-day conference that I organized with 100 bathhouse owners.
Yes.
So we got 100 people from all over North America.
Can I say, are some of the best looking people I have ever seen?
I know.
I sat down in that audience and I was just like, what? Everybody in here looks like a model. Jesus.
But you don't have that. That was one of the issues that came up. Some people complained about the photos that people use on Instagram because they tend to use the really fit people.
Yeah.
And that's not how everybody looks like. And so there's other operators that actually purposely use regular looking people.
But this is the thing about wellness, and I want to get into your 3 stools of bathing because that is really interesting. But with wellness, it feels like we're at this inflection point of it could be, it wants to be mass, it wants to be democratized. We want people to be healthier, all of us, but it still has this connotation of like the elites and like modeling and beauty.
Yeah,
and
either wealth or body.
Yes.
Or age. I'm often the older one.
But if you go to a bathhouse in another culture, you have made me realize, like, oh, wait, this is like actually the perfect marriage because it's none of that. The aunties are there, this person's eating French fries. I'm talking about certain kinds of bathhouses, but I love that. Okay, back to this 3 prongs. We've got one of them, I'm guessing, community? Okay. No?
Social. So I didn't make this up. There's a guy, Mikkel Aland, who in the 70s wrote this book called Sweat. And I think he was in like his early 20s. He went all over the world and research, and there was a renaissance in bathing in the 70s. And he went all over the world and wrote about almost every culture had a bathing tradition. And he wrote about them. That's why it's not called sauna, because sauna is one particular tradition from one country. But all these countries had different traditions. And he wrote this book. And he just came out with a documentary called Perfect Sweat that's on Amazon. You can download it, where he went back and just revisited all these places 30, 40 years later. But he says there's the 3 stools, and that what he found is for them to be really fully successful, you needed all 3. One is the physical. So the heat, the cold, that's where you get the benefits. Like when Peter Attia is talking about cold, that's the physical side, the living longer physical. The social, to me, that's also where you get the health benefits. To me, that's what's more, especially these 20-year-olds that you see othership. I'm not worried about them living to be 100. These people are so fit and they're so young, but you do worry about their social life.
It's a huge cultural discussion right now. Young people and their social anxiety,
and all of that. So to me, the social aspect, that it's a place where you come into contact with people you don't know. And even if you don't talk to them, even if it's not like, I have to meet someone every time I go, you're coming into contact with people you don't know without most of the social signifiers. Yes, you can tell how much someone paid for a bathing suit generally, but it's a lot less. And so you're having a different social connection, and you're basically getting high with these people because you're going through hot and cold. And so you're opened up in a different way. And then the third is the most important to me. And this is the one people don't like to talk about because it's spiritual. So physical, social, and spiritual. And I'm not talking about Jesus necessarily. To me, and the way I heard Mikkel described it, is spiritual is any connection that puts you in connection with yourself at a deep level, others, and nature. And you really get all 3 of those, even in a crowded bathhouse. Generally, there's part of it where you have a little bit of a quiet time, or you close your eyes and you feel your body. Literally, you can feel it getting hot, you can feel it getting cold. You sort of come down. You have a experience with other people, whether they're the family you went with, your best friend, someone you just met, or when I go to othership, one of the reasons I like it is I go by myself. I don't really talk to that many people, but I'm having a social experience that I don't have. I have 2 small kids, and my life can feel sort of small because dealing with these kids, and I go to the office.
I think after the pandemic, it's something all of us have experienced.
And so I get to go there and I don't have to chit-chat with everybody, but I get to feel like a social experience. And then the connection with something larger than yourself, to me, that's whatever that is for you. And it might be very overt, like sometimes in, other troop, they lead you through sort of meditations. But I think for most of us, it's that feeling we get. Why people come back to bathhouses is because you feel better. You feel more connected. And so that's the part that to me, and when we did this gathering of people, that people were most interested in. People think, oh, bathhouses have peaked because there's so many, and it's just starting. And in a few years, I think it is going to be a more mature industry. And what I think the thing we all shared is we don't want to lose the spiritual part. Inherently, it's social and physical, or else it doesn't work. And it has to be safe. Both people have to feel safe physically and disease-wise. But the spiritual is just, it's what can get edged out. And if you think about other trends that we think of as modern, but they're really not, like coffee shops, we just sort of industrialized them. Thrifting is having sort of that moment. Yoga. Again, thousands of years old, but they got sort of commodified a little bit. And for some, I think that the spiritual piece gets removed. And so it's really exciting to be at the beginning of sort of an industry, at the beginning of a social movement, and thinking about how do we want to influence it? What do we want? And some of the obvious things are, when we had 100 bathhouse owners, there was only one black woman. And black women are one of the biggest, this surprises some people, but it shouldn't. Black women are one of the biggest users of bathhouses. It's one of the biggest demographics that you see there. So they are great customers, but like a lot of businesses, they are not necessarily running them and benefiting from it. So that was one of the things that came up, is how do we support? And women have really struggled in this industry. And it was just heartbreaking. There's one woman who was buying a mobile sauna to start a business, and the community bank was going to approve it. And they said, and we just need your husband or father to co-sign the loan. This was a 35-year-old woman who had been in finance. And
I'm sorry, what country in the United States?
Minnesota. And I don't think it's just Minnesota. There was a lot of stories.
I know we have the privilege of living in New York where we think things are a certain way, and you have 7 bathhouses you can choose from every day. And
there's this great woman. This other woman was saying whenever she drives up in her mobile sauna, someone rented it, they always say, oh, how did you and your husband get into this business? Or how did y'all,
Wait, was she on stage at the show? Was that what?
Yeah. Well, yes, the woman that talked about sauna bros.
Yes.
She is amazing.
The mobile idea is really cool because, as you said, the infrastructure in a lot of places isn't there.
Correct. And it's a low capital entry.
Did you go in her, what's her mobile sauna like?
Well, hers is I've actually been in it because I met her in Duluth at Sauna Days. I took my 7-year-old to Duluth last spring for sauna days, and I met this woman. She was actually chopping wood for her sauna.
All right.
And she showed my son how to chop wood, and then I heard her present, and she talked about, for the variety show, she made it really mostly funny, but when she actually presented it, it wasn't funny.
There's an intimidation factor is what we're getting to.
The intimidation, the difficulty of finding, none of it is probably going to be that surprising to women in general. And just because you're in a sort of touchy-feely field, there's also a lot of macho. That's why we joke about the sauna bro. It's like a variation of the tech bro. And to me, that's why I want, with the culture of bathing, why we did the variety show, is to take bathing back from just Peter Attia. And again, nothing wrong with Peter. Well, some people do have a problem with Peter Attia, but nothing wrong with the health podcasters or Gwyneth Paltrow that's talking about really fancy bathrooms. That's an entryway. But that's not really, to me, the important part of bathing. And the bathing is it truly should be and can be accessible for everyone. It's great for old people.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
I have to say, I think you're deep into it, and I think the majority of Americans don't yet have those connotations, don't know who Peter is. So you actually, in a way, are in a great place because you can, you said 20-year-olds don't even know what a bathhouse is. You can represent the idea the way that you want it to be, which is social, spiritual.
Yeah. And it's not really me. It's just
I mean the bath culture.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not like leading the bath culture.
Here's the thing though, but you kind of are a little bit
But it's basically I'm helping showcase the people that lead the culture are the people that go and the people that own these things, because that's ultimately what's going to drive it. And so to me, it's encouraging more people to experience it and be a part of it themselves is to me, and that's what was so powerful about having all these people together that run bathhouses, is we had a very shared viewpoint.
Okay, sorry if the sound changed, guys. We had to change microphones there, but we're back. And what I think you're touching on that I want to hear more about is that a bathhouse in different places around the world can be a totally different thing. And if we're trying to build this new place of community and spirituality and do it in America, of course there's going to be options. But what are you coming up against? Like, what do Americans feel about it? Like, what is American bathhouse culture right now? We know like the Nordic love a sauna. And it's maybe you get beat with a branch when you're in Russia. What's American bathhouse culture going to be? Or what is it?
A lot of people's first experience with bathhouse culture is from other cultures. So, a lot of people's first experience, or also in New York, is Korean spas, Spa Castle. In Texas, there's tons of these giant Korean spas. And then there's the Russian baths. But I think what's happening now is people are opening bathhouses that are sort of uniquely American. They might have a sauna, but they don't necessarily go back to any other cultural traditions. I mean, that's like, I think Othership and Bathhouse are two examples of very modern interpretations of the bathhouse. In some ways, the interesting part is, I think, it's not necessarily the price. It's, I think, to something you addressed is, when you look at it on Instagram, everyone has great bodies and you have to get in a bathing suit. And so I think that's actually one of the hard things for people to overcome. And one of the things that I think we need to do is to show people that there's other examples. And not all the places are full with hot 20-year-olds. That's not really what it's about. And I think the best bathhouses are the multi-generational, where you see the older guy. And unfortunately, with code right now, you can't have kids in bathhouses, but you go in other cultures and you see kids, you see the whole family. And there's not that many places. That's why I think, the company I work for is so interesting. There are not that many places that the kids, the parents, and the grandparents all want to go to. They don't want to go to a water park.
So you're coming up against that, but something else is the nakedness versus bathing suit conversation. So
Correct.
Some of the places you're describing, when I've been to bathhouses was that Japan? It was like just a bunch of naked people. It was no big deal.
But it was single sex. So a lot of cultures.
Multi-generational, but single sex. Yes.
Yeah. So there's several cultures that have that. Russian, Finnish. Germany is really the only one. They have co-ed. They call it textile free, which I sort of like that word, textile, instead of new, textile free. Uh-huh. They have textile free bathing, all ages, all sexes, all together. And trust me, it's not sexual. It's actually you feel a little awkward at first, and then you get used to it. That's not what's going to happen in the U.S. And if you go, I went to Las Vegas because everybody said, oh, they have the best sort of bathing, the best spas. I thought they were so lame. It was just, they were all this, they just spent a ton of money on interior decorations. that was the differential, is how much real estate they devoted to the locker room and how expensive were the furnishings. But at the end of the day, it was like a sauna that fit 10 people and a hot tub and a crappy cold plunge. There was no social, and it was all single sex. And so, I mean, it works for me if I go with my husband, but for most people that go as a couple, you're completely separated. You don't know when you're finishing, you want to go together. And so I think that's where, again, is a huge opportunity. And I think where most spas are sort of missing out is on that social aspect.
So the American bathhouse, we're seeing it as the future of, if you could say what this country needs, people would be clothed, excuse me. It would be textile on.
Textile on.
Multi-generational, and the communal spaces would be larger. Are we going to have food? It's America. Like, come on.
Yes, I think food is great. I think food is, that's one of the reasons I like bathhouses. You can go get food after, and you can get a drink. One time I was talking.
But like getting into your bathing suit and getting a big gulp is a weird concept for most Americans.
I know, but you get used. We get used to a lot of things, and most people. And if it's a beer or margarita, it makes it a little easier. And to me, there's a broad definition of wellness. I was talking to this guy, Arrow, who runs the Finnish Sauna Society, and I was talking about well-being and wellness. And he was like, yeah, that's all great. But, after my sauna, I have a beer and a cigar. And there is room for that in wellness. A lot of people come into, one of the other things, the bathhouse is for people in sobriety. It's a great place to be able to meet people and hang out that's not centered around drinking. But I also don't think there's anything wrong for the people that want to have a beer after their sauna. That's a very traditional in Finland for them to have a drink after they're done, relaxing. And so to me, the space to hang out after the bathhouse, after the bathing experience, it's all part of the bathhouse and it's all part of bathing, is the hanging out too. Whether it's to lie down and fall asleep on your own or to just talk, you're feeling great. You don't want to hang out after you've gone to Disney World because your chemicals have been manipulated, and you've just come off a sugar, caffeine, adrenaline crash. After you've gone in hot and cold or just warm water or hot rooms, your chemicals are balanced. You feel great. It's the perfect time to hang out with people. And again, that's why I think people come back, is then they also sleep better, and then they feel better the next day.
Yeah, talk to me about that. What is it about, I know you're not a scientist, but what is it about being in warm water or alternating warm and cold that what's going on? Why is it so good?
The important thing, a lot of wellness is not necessarily backed up by science. And some things you hear about bathhouses are not backed up. But sauna, going in a very hot room, they've done decades and decades of studies. And it has all of these benefits, from cardiovascular to reducing rates of dementia. Cognitive skills. That science is great. I don't think the science is as good on infrared saunas, actually. The science is just starting on cold plunges. But there is also science on just sitting in what I call a thermal bath, which is just warm water. It reduces inflammation. It's the other side of the cold plunge. It's great for you. It's great for older people, and it's great for young people. And you don't even have to pay attention to the science. Just notice how you sleep and notice how you feel the next day. But there are, when I say the three stool, that's the physical. And that's an important part, that you're getting those physical benefits that are real and that are backed up by science.
I was just thinking about how Americans have taken bathhouse culture and kind of what we've done to it. And I was picturing just a hot tub party.
Yes, but that to me, that is part, to me, it doesn't have to be. In Japan, they have onsens, which you go to, but they also have bathing rituals you do at home. There's ways to experience. It's not, we have turned bathing in our homes into a utilitarian thing to see how fast you can get through it. How fast can you do this? It's not really about how enjoyable can you make bathing. We're just doing it for hygienic reasons. And so I think, again, growing up in Texas, lazy rivers were literally inner tubes in rivers. They weren't in hotels. We would go down rivers, called it tubing. To me, that's bathing. That's being in water in a social setting and connecting with each other. I think it's wired into our bodies to want that and seek that out. And we have been doing it for 10,000 years, I think. I mean, and again, that's why to me, it's more than a trend. There's a whole bunch of reasons people come, but the reasons they stay are deeply rooted in human needs.
Yeah. I'm excited to see how you bring this into American culture. As we're winding up here, though, just you personally, because I feel like you are my guru of because you've been to way more bathhouses than I will ever be. And I've done some traveling and tried different. What have been some of your best and maybe some of your worst experiences in bathhouses?
I went all over, mainly Europe, and but the one I was most excited about was Othership, when I went to Othership in Toronto, because it was just 3 rooms. It was a room, a social space. It was an event sauna, which had 50 people. Then they had cold plunge you did as a group, and then you went back to the social space. And so, again, it's to me not the best. It was just, it made me realize what I liked about it was the social aspect that I could do and I did in a lot of places that are beautiful. In those original baths in Germany, in Baden-Baden, it's gorgeous. You go in the hot, you go in the, and you go in all these different, and you stay by yourself. You're pretty much by yourself, and it's quiet. It's more like a really fancy spa. And to me, that experience wasn't as powerful and meaningful as the social. And so that's why I think you don't have to go, the most beautiful, probably Vals in Germany by Peter Zumthor. It's just gorgeous, but it's not, it's spiritual in an aesthetic sense, and that's so beautiful, but you're ruining it by being there.
The space itself.
The space itself.
Honestly, we could take this whole podcast and just sub in the word church, and I feel like a lot of it would make sense. This whole thing of the place is so beautiful, I'm intimidated, but I'm getting spirituality and community, but there's these preconceived notions of what it should be. It's how a lot of people feel about their religion in a way. I don't mean to get high-minded about it.
And it doesn't preclude religion. And I think that's what people, that's when there was that article about Peter Thiel and I don't know, doing these sort of religious gatherings or something. And I think people are looking, and for a lot of people, they don't want necessarily, even if they have a religion, they're still looking for that other aspect of spirituality. I don't think it's definitely not a replacement for what religion offers. To me, it's really a complement. And again, something, and that's why every culture has developed one of these. That's not a coincidence. It's a human need.
That's the craziest part when you look around the world. But I feel like Americans, maybe because it's a newer culture in the history of cultures of the world, there wasn't an American way of doing it.
I mean, there was an indigenous sweat lodges.
Of course.
But we never had it. Yeah.
Not North America, just the country that came about in the 1800s or something,
The Puritan roots, I think, again, going back to that sex panic, is why we didn't. And it was utilitarian. We developed bathrooms, so we didn't have to have these things. We had bathrooms far faster than other cultures. Other cultures were still using them also as a source of getting clean.
Yeah. And to that point, clearly now we know how to sanitize places, and we know so that's less of an issue than it ever was.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't think you're not going to run up against that, I'm sure, especially after COVID.
Definitely. But a lot of people thought COVID was going to kill this movement because it started before COVID, and it's really taken off after COVID because, one, relatively speaking, saunas are a really safe place to get away from viruses. But two, people became more reprioritized their health and the social aspect.
Yeah. I just really quick, we have a speed round at the end. It's our 5 quick questions. Do you have time for it? 5 minutes?
Yeah, do it.
Okay. I know you have to go, but we do this with every guest. Fat Mascara 5. Oh, you can't do this because you're on your phone. I usually ask people what's the last note they wrote themselves in their notes app.
I can look. Okay. What's the next one?
Well, while you're looking for your note, what's the first beauty or grooming product you remember ever using and loving? I don't know, was it a hair product, a soap, anything like we ask every guest this?
It was a picture of because I haven't used it. It was a picture of a bridge in West Texas. Is in notes.
Oh, in notes. Oh, interesting. Oh, you put pictures in there.
Yeah,
okay.
I did for a while. The first beauty product, it might have been like an acne cream in the 80s.
Okay. Maybe an oxypad or something.
Yeah.
What is a treatment, beauty, spa, whatever, you would never do?
I mean, I guess I just don't really care about pedicures.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. No pedicures for Robbie. What's your favorite snack?
Popcorn.
All right. And last question. It's 11 a.m. on your day off. What are you doing?
Probably playing with my kids. Taking my kids to soccer.
Soccer practice.
They have soccer at 11.
A true American dad.
I wish it was a bathhouse. I wish I could say it was a bathhouse.
Well, this is it's a
not.
trick question because that's also your job, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I would. That's what I would love to do, either that or pottery. But usually it's something with my kids.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for coming on Fat Mascara, giving us bathing culture.
We hope you enjoyed the show.
It's your reviews and feedback that help us make the podcast even better. Head over to iTunes to rate and review us or email your thoughts to info@fatmascara.com.
We also want to answer your beauty questions and hear what products you love. To share a Razor One product review or to ask a beauty question, email us at info@fatmascara.
If you send it as a voice memo file, we can even share your voice on the podcast. You can also do that by leaving us a voice message. Our phone number in the United States is 646-481-8182.
Thanks so much for listening.